In this episode,
joined today by Susy Crosser.
Tools to stay present, be in the moment, movement of the body, wellness, health. We are wired as humans to be in connection with each other. Come as you are, not as you think you should be. What I'm teaching to my students in my class is what I'm learning in my own body. I wished I'd found this yoga like 30 years ago. Be a yes, this quest for perfection. We are all whole, complete, and perfect right now the way we are.
happy Friday, friends. We're so excited to have my dear friend Susy. Thank you for coming.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we are just super fortunate to be joined today by Susy Crosser, who's a local yoga teacher, has been a teacher, and you're kind of what I would describe as Audi adjacent. You've got all these connections to the school. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you to this moment.
Yeah, so I've been teaching yoga since 2012 and just love it, and have met so many great people along the way, including both of you guys. And yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce the concepts of yoga to people, and also, I mean, really the tools that come along with it. You know, tools to stay present, be in the moment, movement of the body, wellness, health, all those things.
Okay, perfect. Well, you're in the right place because we got a podcast that's talking all about that. And I thought a way to get going. I want to show you these photos. This is the first time I actually met you in person. I'd taken your class before at Big, but you were kind of at the front of the room, and I'm in the back row. But you came over to one of our Audi community yoga events that we had. And I was just interested. I mean, bringing these photos up brought some memories back for me. That was really one of the first things that Bhavin and I started doing together, was creating these community yoga events. Yeah, what was your experience? I mean, I don't know if you remember it. It was 2022 in the fall, so a bit of ways, but yeah.
Yeah, it was, I remember it was really hot. And what's new, it's Texas.
Yeah.
Bright sunshine. It was really a beautiful day. And I think Bhavin, you and the band were out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And yeah, just it was super fun to be outside in the elements.
We're out there on the football field.
Yeah, on the football field. Of course, my friend Gayatri was there, Lene, a whole bunch of folks that I already knew, and then got to meet a whole other crew as well.
And what we were going for, I mean, we call it Audi Community Yoga, but we're really trying to grab for that community piece, and that's something that I was interested in, if you could talk to us about. Yeah, kind of the role of community inside yoga, right? You know, you hear a lot about it. Every yoga studio I've ever been to talks about community. What's going on with that? Why is it so important?
I love talking about this so much. Community, we are wired as humans to be in connection with each other. And, you know, from the time children are born and they're in their cribs, they need physical touch. Babies need to be held in order to thrive and to grow. And we as humans, we need that connection and that community as we move through life to stay grounded and really experience just what I would call like the ultimate in wellness. It definitely includes community. As a former PE teacher and also now a full-time fitness instructor, one of my favorite things to do is lead group exercise. And I've often thought, what is it about classes? Why do humans gravitate toward group exercise when they could just stay at home, right? You can stay at home, and many people do exercise on their own, but you have this this beautiful thing that happens when humans come together, which is love, connection, communication, accountability. So all of those things feed into us and just help us experience life to a much greater degree than we would without it.
Yeah. So how do you, when you're doing it then, you know, whether it's you're teaching the yoga class or you're teaching that group fitness class, are you actively scanning for that dimension in the middle of doing that work, or it's something that you're trying to put in place before it starts, or how, you know, because there's a lot of things happening in the moment. Yeah. How are you feeling for that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, as a teacher walking into the room, the first thing that I do is honestly just take a pause and just feel the energy in the room. And sometimes just observing, sometimes the community is already happening. You've
Yeah.
got chatting everywhere. It's almost like a buzz. You can feel it. Other times when I walk in a room, sometimes it's extremely quiet. The space is uh, just the energy is very calm.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's frenetic. So that's a big part of it, is coming in,
Right.
feeling
You
the
making that
energy.
read. Yeah.
hmm And then starting to reach out and connect to people I've never met before. Hey, what's your name? How did you hear about us? What brought you here today? Um, and then oftentimes creating community throughout class is going back to those folks, the new people and the ones that come on a regular basis, and using their names, um, making sure they feel seen,
Right.
is huge.
Yeah, that's what was coming up for me, is that piece about making sure people feel seen and heard. It's such a valuable part of the human experience.
Mm,
And when I think about community, I think about the container that it's in, so the space, and setting the space and creating an environment for community to happen.
mhm.
And it will almost happen automatically. And if it isn't, then you can easily nudge it by
Sure.
reaching out, or having an intentional connection moment, or teaching an intentional connection moment.
Mhm.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. And something that came up when you were just speaking is creating that safe space, making sure that folks know that however they showed up is perfect. In fact, one of the yoga studios that I taught in for many years had that very thing on the wall: "Come as you are, not as you think you should be."
Right.
And I think it's so beautiful, as a human, to be able to come sit with other folks, some some may be complete strangers to you, but know that no matter how you're feeling, whether you're super energetic that day, whether you've had something tough happen, whether you're struggling, it's all good. You can just show up and be yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that touches one of the ideas that we've put out there throughout these podcasts. Is I was really impacted by that duality. There's sort of a duality in that. That there's in yoga, there's that thing you just said. You are good. You're whole. You're beautiful, but you can always get better too.
Mhm.
And so then it felt to me that the teachers were really managing both of those dimensions simultaneously all the
Mhm.
time. So you're creating that safety space, that sense of confidence, but then also trying to push, right? And not,
Exactly.
yeah. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I know in my own life and in my own work, that those times when I'm critical of myself, judgmental, very hard on myself, um, it's more difficult to grow. And in fact, sometimes my vision is blocked. My internal vision is blocked. I can't see anything bigger or better for myself because I feel stuck in, whatever's going on at the time. If I can let go of that judgment, and just accept myself for who I am right now, no strings attached, that actually frees me up from that stuckness. And I can see something bigger, something different, something new. And then also be in choice about that. Like, maybe I just want to hang out and do this thing that I'm doing right now. And maybe there's that other new, bigger, different thing out there that I want to go for.
Yeah. I'm thinking about teaching and having a classroom. Your ability to go to that depth with yourself is your ability to go to that depth with students, or hold that space for them, or allow that growth, or have a vision and allow them to have a vision for themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember as a school teacher, um, one of the things that I was taught by a mentor teacher when I first began teaching, and then uh, really tried to emulate myself, was catching students doing something right.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than being the monitor that was, yeah, catch them doing something well, and then affirm them for that, encourage them in that.
Yeah.
And I had some really good interactions and relationships with my students along the way because of that wisdom that was imparted to me.
Yeah,
so many years ago.
that's a fundamental pillar of behavioral psychology, is to reinforce the behaviors you do want,
Mm.
and you'll get more of that, right? And if you focus on what you don't want, you're going to get more of that too.
Yeah, like yeah, it's like yeah, you're focused on it to try to get rid of it, but all you're doing is pulling it closer. You said something that I've been wanting to ask about, which is you talked about mentor teachers. One of the things that strikes me about yoga is that oftentimes, compared to a school setting, like there's often other yoga teachers in the yoga class. Like teachers are in another teacher's class a lot, right?
Mhm.
Is that purposeful, or is that just kind of how it works out? But it seems, if you walk around our building, quite frankly, most of the time the teacher is in there by themselves. It's a very compartmentalized activity, and we try to push against that, transdisciplinary projects and other interdisciplinary pieces, shared lessons, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it is kind of lonely work at some level.
Mhm.
I see it differently in the yoga space. Am I seeing that right? Is that part of it? Like are you encouraged to go to other people's classes? What's the learning process there?
That's a great question. I love going to other teachers' classes. Well, first of all, in order for me to be an effective teacher and for me to connect to my source, to know what to teach, to what to bring to my students, I have to be in my own practice. I have to be on my mat. And I would say 98% of the time, what I'm teaching to my students in my class is what I'm learning in my own body, in my own practice. Even beyond that, one of the things I encourage my yoga students to do on the regular is to go to many, many different teachers' classes, because obviously we all have our own style.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming from the same place. We're coming from the sutras. We're coming from the asana, the yoga practice. And though there's such a beauty in the individuality that we all teach with. So I learn so much by going to my colleagues' classes, and I have my teachers as well that I also gravitate towards and practice with regularly.
Yeah, it's making me think about my teaching experience and the opportunity that we have in academia for the receiving of the information and how that would help dispense the information versus this just like nonstop talk down or talk at flow.
Yeah, it flips the relation. That's what I'm thinking is, because we talk a lot about like, beginner mind and things like that, but you're flipping back and forth between a teacher mindset and a student mindset. And that what I heard you say was your experience in the student mindset is informing your ability to be the teacher, and we think, the students will say versions of that a lot, and they'll say it lovingly, but, like, you really don't understand our reality. And that's probably true to some extent, right? And that fluidity, I think, is a really powerful part of the learning ecosystem in a studio, right?
Yeah, I remember in my teacher training or in my early days of teaching yoga, I forget who taught me this, but it really changed the way I've moved from then on. It was this idea that as a teacher, you come into it, you're like, oh, I have to figure out what I need to say to this class for 60 minutes, and I have to, oh, it's a lot of stress. And that was flipped on its head by this idea of listening is the greatest teacher. Your ability to listen to your students, even though they're not speaking, listen to them, you'll be able to give them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to be able to say that Sarah Montross is my teacher, even though I've been teaching for a long time too. Or to have Marlon as my teacher, or whatever it is. That is so rewarding and helpful to me as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like teaching if I'm not practicing. I won't. I'll be like, I'm not practicing right now. I shouldn't be teaching.
Right.
How are you? I mean, you guys can both probably respond to this. How are you listening to them when they're not speaking? I love that idea. How are you doing that?
It's that intuitive energy, right? And you can see their energy and their mood and their affect and the way that because the way we do anything is the way we do everything.
Right.
How are you showing up? How are you being in the space? Right.
Yeah. I look a lot at body language too.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of the yoga that we teach is in a heated environment. So there's that too. It's like, there's a way that we could show up and teach, which is just, like you said, very scripted, Here it is. Here's my playlist. Here's my sequence. These are the cues I'm going to say. And that would be okay. Some people would be absolutely fine with that. However, there's an opportunity for something so much bigger as you come in and look at an individual. You look at an individual body in a pose, and I'm seeing what's going on in this body in this moment right now. Well, I see sweat dripping profusely. How's the air in the room? Do I need to turn the air down for this person to have, a more complete experience? Seeing where their feet are on the mat. Maybe there's a grimace on the face. I see she's grimacing. Oh, maybe she just turns her foot this way and changes the angle of her knee. That might, and suddenly the grimace changes to
Yeah, you guys seem to have this just-in-time ability to also, hey, you can do that, or go for it, or hey, what's the worst that can happen? You can fall,
Yeah.
And, if we translate that into our context, what's the worst that can happen? I gotta pee, It's not like, oh, you just fell on the floor, and there's all this kind of stress around the feedback loop, right? But in that space, there can be more play to it, right? And I think as adults, just being reminded that, like, yeah, all you're gonna do is fall down. It's okay, right? You can, but it just feels like kind of when you're needing it, it's there, right? Just to, try to get up, try to, do that handstand hop or whatever it is. I love that part of it.
Yeah, well, like if I have a script and I'm coming in to teach a class and there is a beautiful soul sitting in a chair or with a cast, what am I supposed to do? Right? I have to be open to changing and being fluid and accepting learning differences and honoring that. And in fact, it makes me a better teacher to be more fluid, right? To be able to teach to each and everybody, no matter what they look like and how they are in their body. I want to give them a class too, not just have a predetermined class. That's ridiculous. I feel like I'd be steamrolling over everybody if I did that, and I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, cool. Well, listen, the title of our podcast is the Yoga of School, and it means different things to different people. What's it mean to you? Like when you first heard that phrase, like what kind of started bubbling up for you?
I mean, when I first heard about it, the first thing that came to my mind was awesome. This is awesome. Because the tools of yoga are for everyone. It doesn't matter your age or your background or whatever. The tools are for everyone and they can enhance the lives of everyone. And I especially when I think of our students, public school students and private school students, right? There's a lot of pressure on these kids to achieve, to be successful, to go to a specific school or work toward a specific vocation. And that's a lot. That's a lot for kids. And if we can give them these tools to help them navigate, what a huge gift. What a huge gift. I mean, how many people have you heard say that, that we're in class with say, oh man, I wish I'd found this yoga like 30 years ago. Yeah, me. Oh, I've said
it. Yeah. What would my life have been like had I started this earlier?
What are those tools? When you say the tools in your mind, what are the tools?
Yeah, so I think probably the very first tool I learned at Big Power Yoga, and we come from the Baptiste lineage, was be a yes. I'm like, what in the world is that? Be a yes. And Baron Baptiste talks a lot about it. He says, if you're for something, if you're a yes for something, there's an energy around that, right? If I'm a yes for health, then I will likely also be a yes for good nutrition, eating well, moving my body. And in order to be a yes for the things that matter to you, you are required to be a no, because we can't do everything, right? So there are some things we're going to be a no for so that we can be a yes for what is true to us, our true north, which is another thing we hear a lot about, right? It's true north alignment, being real. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the many is be a yes. But I mean, breath, we start with breath. Breath is at the center of our physical yoga practice and also of meditation, the things that we do to stay grounded. Something as simple as taking a deep breath and sighing it out when when you feel frustrated can change your whole mood. So things like this, meditation for sure, one of the most transformational tools I've experienced in my life up to this point. Being able to sit and settle and allow my mind to move free of judgment and connect to source.
Yeah. Sounds like the life skills set of tools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially that's what we're trying to do here is find a context in this environment where we can bring that into our students. And
amazing.
And so that, like you said, if they could acquire it, then they could use it. We talk about lifelong sports, now it's lifelong wellness tools, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been really interested in this idea of what an ideal future school could look like, or a future community learning environment. Like, what are some of the things that you think about would be, if you could design it your own way, what are some of the parts that you might have in it?
The first thing that popped into my mind when you said that was this picture of being outside in nature.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, for me, one of the greatest things about childhood was being outdoors all the time, on my bike, running, digging in the dirt, planting a garden with my grandpa that literally never grew. And we did it every single year. And it didn't matter because it wasn't about the result. It was about being together,
with grandpa,
being in community, and also, being with the earth.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that pops into my mind is being outside and being physical.
Yeah.
Moving outside. What else would it involve? It would definitely involve alternate types of learning. The arts, big time. We were talking about the arts earlier and how important that is. And educating both sides of the brain, right? Not just the left side analytical, calculating brain, but the right brain, creativity, encompassing all of it together.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we feel like we're at this balance, almost like a teeter-totter balance point, in that I feel like we're at the end of the kind of factory schooling age, right? And it really tilted towards cognitive process, right? And now you feel like it's perhaps maybe tilting back the other way, the advent of AI and some other different kinds of tools that are out there in the kind of classic academic cognitive space. Maybe they free up some time or some energy to tilt some of the time allotment back to those kind of things that you were talking about, to, what's going to be important for a kid in their future. The ability to be creative seems huge, right? The ability to interact with other people, which I think we probably learned playing, right? We learned that in unstructured play, which doesn't happen so much in the world anymore. Although you do see it here a lot. Like when kids, school doesn't start till 8:15, but a lot of kids are here by 7:15 and they're just running around out there. And we're fortunate with the beautiful facilities that we have, where they just have some place where they make up their games. They're all in on Foursquare, and I love that, right? I love to hear them, and every now and then we get into some dust ups, but it's a different kind of play than what they're doing in their youth travel team or something like that. That's still all adult facilitated. We have adults around, but we're not out there organizing it for them, so they have to figure it out themselves. This feels huge to me. I think that's something we've really driven that out of life for all kinds of reasons, protecting kids, being worried about security. And so there's not that sort of freedom that I think we probably had when we were younger, just to go outside. Like it's summertime, mom gave you some breakfast and said, hey, see you at 6, and you hopped on the bike and
don't come back until the sun goes down.
Right. You figure it out, and like the world, that's gone. And I don't know that we're going to bring all of that back, but we're seeking pieces of that for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What would the teachers look like in the school?
Oh, very interesting. Well, I think the teachers would, like we pointed out earlier, as a yoga teacher, if one's going to impart something substantial as a yoga teacher, he or she's got to be on your mat. You've got to be doing it yourself. So I think for sure the teachers in this school would be employing the same things themselves, right? They would be meditating and moving their body daily and attempting to eat healthy, spending time outside, walking around barefoot. I'm showing all my hippie colors.
Yeah, beautiful.
all of those things. And, one thing that jumped out to me too, as you were speaking a moment ago, was this quest for perfection. And I feel like in school, it exists, especially upper school, as these kids, many of them are preparing and hoping to go to college. There's this quest for perfection, and I've got to get it right. And failure is something that is shunned, or people don't, failure bad, success good.
Right.
Yet, like, that's how we grow.
Right.
That's how we learn, is through the failures. And I feel like if we made failing less diabolical,
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, it didn't work out this time.
Yeah.
Do it again.
What's
or
the worst,
how could you change it?
What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, you just fell down on your mat. Yeah.
What did you learn?
Yeah.
And I think, to go back to your question, like, what would the teachers look like? They could look like anything and everything, because I feel like that's, again, that diversity is what makes us, makes community. And though what popped into my mind was out of the box thinkers, being able to, if required and when required, think outside of the box.
Yeah. Or be agile enough to flex anyway.
To pivot when you need to pivot.
Yeah, I think the people that need it all lined up in a certain way, that they're not going to be so useful in the very near term, because I think everything's just going to move around it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, that quest for perfection piece. Interested in your thoughts on this. When we talk to our students, especially our young women in the upper school, what they express as one of their major sources of anxiety, probably their biggest stressor outside of the academic piece, is body image.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see yoga being helpful for that or harmful for that in some ways. Yeah, I'm interested in how just the yoga community approaches that, right? Because you have sort of one side of it of, hey, here's my perfect Instagram pose and my new outfit, right? Maybe fueling that fire.
Sure.
But then there's that other messaging of, hey, you're beautiful, you're fine, you're good. How do you negotiate that? That's a huge one, I think.
Well, it definitely goes back to the grounding belief that we are all whole, complete, and perfect right now, the way we are. And as a person who has recovered from an eating disorder, and also have a daughter who went through something very similar, I totally get that body image can be a huge stressor, is a huge stressor. And again, I think it's, the quest for perfection, this idea of, what is beauty. And I think in yoga, especially in the last few years, and Bhavin, you chime in on this if you have some experience with this too. I feel like that that sort of ideal, what does a yogi look like, is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a huge shift, and we see all sorts of people, all shapes, all colors, all everything. We have it all in the yoga room. And as a teacher, to be able to walk in and go, oh, wow, look at this. I have a brand new yogi who's never practiced before. And I have someone who's been in the practice for 15 years. Someone who's just starting an exercise program. They've never exercised, went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you need to go to yoga, right? So there's, I think the yoga world is gradually coming around.
Coming to terms on that.
I believe so, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think what we've described as the westernization of yoga, right? That the original yoga was already all encompassing for everybody, and it did include all sorts of people. Iyengar, at that time, it was for men.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this part where it was men and women were allowed. That was an interesting piece. But ancient times, right? The 5,000-year-old piece is really for everybody. I like to describe it as the instruction manual for being human on Earth. The exercises we need for the gravity of Earth. That's what yoga is. So it's for everybody, anybody on Earth. Now, so the Western, it blew up in the West. It's a business. It's a multi-billion-dollar a year business market. And you have this huge commodification of it. And then you have that whole digestion process. happening. And we're at the part now where we're finally bringing in the diversity, equity. It looks like it's for everybody. You have some people who don't look like traditional yogis or whatever, and it's so wonderful to see that beautiful array of this diversity happening. To teach it, it'll all come around to say, hey, it is for everybody. I see that.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to do in my own yoga practice is use what we call props, right? And you guys are familiar, blocks, straps. Yeah, yoga block. Ta-da. And I say it often in class, right?
Yeah.
To use a block does not mean you are weaker. It doesn't make you less than as a yogi. All these props are for is to account for the difference in our body proportions. So I have long legs, short arms. So a block brings the floor closer to me, gives me the support that I need so that I can put my body in the shape that the teacher calls. So, this is just one of the ways.
This is an equity element.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of our friends, and my friend and teacher, Cesar, he has just done huge things in the past, 3 years. He's been teaching, and his specialty is teaching to every body, every type of body, every type of person. And he's just brilliant at it.
I was thinking about him too. I would love to have him on the pod. Actually, he has a lot to say about diversity and inclusion and making people feel safe and seen and heard. I oftentimes describe him as my brother in the sense of like he keeps me accountable to my vows, like a monk does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't wait to get him on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have great tunes.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has great tunes, but your tunes really resonate with me. How do you pick them? Like, what's your strategy on the playlists and how do you do that?
I love music, and Baba knows, I really do. And one of the things that restores me back to wholeness when I get wacky and fragmented and out of sorts is listening to music.
Yeah.
And I love sitting down to make a podcast. For me, music evokes emotion, deep emotion.
Yeah.
And there are certain songs that I'll listen to and I'll go, oh, whoa, no, that cannot go on the playlist because I'll lose it. The emotion will come bubbling up. So I do. One of my sort of criterion for a song on a playlist is how does it make me feel?
Right. Just your
energetically. So we have, in fact, another one of my teachers, Nick Zog, is the one who sat down with me and we talked about making playlists when I first started teaching with him. And he described it as a bell curve, as an energetic bell curve. So at the beginning of practice, we're calm, we're settling down, we're getting grounded, landing, and then the energy builds and the
like a double,
rigor
right?
builds.
It feels like it's a double. Yeah.
The rigor builds, and then towards the end of the practice, we start to chill, and then we come into Shavasana at the end. So the energy of the music sort of follows the energy of the bell curve. And sometimes that's a classic rock bell curve. Yeah. And sometimes it's, an EDM bell curve. You just never know what's going to come up. Spotify has a lot to do with it.
Does it?
It generates a lot of cool songs for me. So, but I'll tell you, these are my go-tos. Guitars, strumming anything with strings, and trombones.
Trombones.
Trumpets, brass.
Yeah.
I love that. So when I hear a song and it's a good just a strumming and sometimes lyrics, sometimes no lyrics.
Yeah. And you're trying to get that yoking, right? I mean, in the
yes.
like that thing you just did there where you kind of got into yourself and you were just feeling it. Yeah, like when that can be happening when you're in that pose and sweating like crazy and you drop that and you're just like, yeah, man, it's Fleetwood Mac or whatever. I love that moment. It's a great moment and like a healing moment, I think, right? There's so many endorphins or just even talking about it, I'm feeling it, let alone like when you get it lined up. And it must be pretty hard to like get the people to the peak. I don't know, how hard is that, right?
No, I mean, it's really the practice is by design, right? So it's designed to take you to that peak pose, whether that's wheel pose or a different pose that the teacher has chosen. But that's the point, is to get your, take the body into similar shapes the whole way through the practice.
Yeah.
And then we get to the peak pose. Everything's ready to go. And it's just a matter of taking a deep breath and doing the thing.
Yeah.
Do the thing.
The thing is the thing.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I love that. I love that.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap today's pod on. I really appreciate you and your time, and I want to go practice with you.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Come on.
We're gonna do that. Maybe we'll get all our guests collected, and we'll do just like a celebration flow and
That'd
invite
be
everybody
fun.
here.
That would be so fun.
So, great to have you here. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
Namaste.
Yeah,
Namaste.
namaste.
Okay. All right.
Good job.
All right.
Crushed it. Wow.